Hey folks, welcome to Deep Dive Dispatch, the podcast where we don't just scratch the surface. We dig deep into the political landscapes that shape our world today. I'm excited to introduce your guides on this journey through history and headlines, John Matthews and his insightful co-host, Sarah Collins. Together, they'll peel back the layers of complex political issues, offering a slightly conservative viewpoint while staying rooted in facts and historical context. So, buckle up for a thought-provoking ride as we dive into the stories behind the stories. This is Deep Dive Dispatch. Let's get started.
Right, so today we're going to be diving into some pretty murky waters.
Oh, sounds interesting.
Yeah, we're talking about the deep state, right? It's this shadowy network some believe is like pulling the strings behind the scenes in the U.S. government. Is it real? Is it a threat to us?
Right.
And what does Donald Trump want to do about it? You sent over some really interesting sources for this deep dive.
I did.
Excerpts from Trump's Agenda 47 website.
Yeah.
A Wikipedia entry on the deep state.
Okay.
And an article from the Heritage Foundation that kind of shines a light on, how the government spends money.
It's a fascinating topic, and some might say a controversial topic, right?
Yeah.
The idea of a deep state, it really captures the imagination.
It really does sound like something out of a spy thriller or something,
Oh,
But Trump is taking it pretty seriously. On his Agenda 47 website, he lays out a plan to fight back against this deep state.
Right.
Using a power called impoundment. Honestly, before this deep dive, I had a vague idea of what impoundment was, but Trump describes it as, the president's ability to basically hit the pause button on spending funds allocated by Congress.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Imagine the president having a line item veto on the budget.
Oh, okay.
That's essentially what impoundment is. And Trump claims that, bringing back this power would allow him to starve the deep state out of existence.
Wow. That's a pretty strong statement. But before we get into the details of his plan,
right,
step back and just define what exactly we mean by deep state, right?
Sure.
Trump paints a pretty specific picture on his website.
Okay.
Calling it a network of warmongers and globalists who are driving wasteful government spending.
Interesting.
So,
when we look at the Wikipedia entry, though, we see a more nuanced definition. It describes the deep state as a conspiracy theory, alleging a clandestine network within the U.S. government that's working against, elected officials.
So is it a real thing?
Well, that's the...
Or it's just a conspiracy theory?
It's a highly debated topic.
Yeah.
Some politicians and journalists do believe a deep state exists.
Okay.
And they'll point to, potential instances of manipulation.
Right.
Or unelected officials influencing policy. But others will argue it's just a baseless idea that undermines public trust in government institutions.
So it's kind of a he said, she said situation.
It is.
But regardless of whether it's real or imagined, the idea of a deep state clearly resonates with a lot of people, right?
It does. The Wikipedia entry even cites polling data.
Wow.
Suggesting that a significant percentage of Americans believe in it.
Really?
What's fascinating is that, this belief kind of cuts across political lines. It's not just a fringe group. It's a sentiment that exists, among a surprisingly large portion of the population.
That's pretty thought-provoking. It makes you wonder, why so many people believe in this idea, even if there's no concrete evidence, to prove it. Is it a general distrust of government?
Could be.
Or maybe, people have seen real-world examples of government secrecy that make them think there's more going on behind the scenes.
Sure, yeah.
We've all seen those spy movies, right? Well, all the cloak and dagger stuff.
And history is full of examples of governments operating in secrecy.
Yeah.
Sometimes for legitimate reasons, sometimes not.
Right.
So it's understandable why this idea would kind of take hold.
Okay, so we've got this theory of a deep state, potentially manipulating things behind the scenes, and we have Trump proposing to use this power called impoundment to fight back. What should we unpack next?
Well, I think let's delve deeper into Trump's plan.
Okay.
His Agenda 47 website lays out some pretty specific actions he would take if he was given the power of impoundment.
Okay, let's hear it. He's all about action. So I'm curious what his strategy is.
Well, on day one, he would order all federal agencies to identify areas for significant budget cuts.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
He'd want to get the ball rolling right away.
Exactly. And of course, he'd challenge the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 in court and work with Congress to overturn it.
Yeah.
He sees this act, which essentially stripped the president of the power of impoundment, as unconstitutional.
Yeah, he doesn't mince words, does he?
No, he doesn't.
But hold on, before we go any further, you mentioned the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. Can you, give us a little more context on that?
Sure. So before 1974, presidents had more leeway in controlling spending.
Yeah.
They could, to some extent, decide not to spend funds Congress had allocated, if they deemed it necessary. But the Impoundment Control Act changed that.
So it basically shifted power from the executive branch to the legislative branch.
It did.
When it comes to the budget.
Yes. It established a process for Congress to set and enforce budget limits. And it created the Congressional Budget Office to provide independent analysis of the budget.
Interesting. So Trump is essentially advocating for a pretty significant shift in the way the U.S. government handles its finances.
He is.
He wants to take power away from Congress and put it back in the hands of the president.
That's the core of his argument.
Yeah.
He believes that this shift in power is what allowed the deep state to flourish.
Okay.
And that restoring impoundment would give the president the tools needed to dismantle it.
Okay. That's a pretty bold claim. But let's dig a little deeper into the whole wasteful spending argument.
Right.
This is where our third source, the article from the Heritage Foundation, comes in, right?
Yes. This article provides specific examples of what many consider to be, questionable government spending.
Okay.
And these examples are really eye-catching.
I'm all ears. Give me the juicy details.
For instance, the article mentions grants for DEI scholarships in Burma.
Wait, DEI scholarships in Burma. That does seem a little out there.
Right.
Okay.
And girl-centered climate action in Brazil.
Okay, what?
The article also highlights grants given to organizations fighting disinformation.
Now, that one's interesting, especially given the current debate about what actually constitutes disinformation.
Yeah.
Some might argue that certain organizations are politically biased when making those judgments.
Exactly. And that feeds right back into Trump's argument. He sees these examples as evidence of a deep state agenda.
Okay.
And believes that impoundment would force greater accountability and prevent this type of spending in the first place.
So he's saying that if the president had the power to say, nope, not spending money on that, it would force agencies to be more careful about how they use taxpayer dollars.
That's the idea. He believes it would essentially cut off the deep state's funding and force them to operate within the confines of what he considers to be, the will of the people.
Okay, so we've kind of set the stage here. We've got this murky concept of the deep state.
Yeah.
We've got Trump's bold plan to bring back impoundment.
Right.
And we've got some examples of spending that, at the very least, raise some eyebrows. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to connect all of this back to, you, the listener. What are your thoughts on all this?
Right.
Do you believe in the existence of a deep state? And if so, do you think restoring impoundment is the right way to address it?
Yeah.
Or is this just shifting the battleground for political control?
Right.
These are complex questions, and there are no easy answers. But that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah, it really does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, the idea of unelected officials wielding power and manipulating things behind the scenes is pretty unsettling.
Yeah, it is.
But on the other hand, giving the president that much control over spending could also be risky.
It could.
It's a tough call.
It is. And this whole debate about the deep state and impoundment really boils down to a fundamental question.
Okay.
Who do we trust more with power?
Right.
The elected representatives in Congress or the president?
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Trump's argument is essentially that Congress has become too entrenched, too beholden to special interests, and too willing to, spend recklessly.
Yeah.
He's saying that giving the president more power is the only way to, break that cycle.
Right.
And ensure that the government is truly accountable to the people.
That's his perspective, yes. And it's a perspective that resonates with a lot of people, especially, those who are frustrated with the current state of politics and feel like their voices aren't being heard.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Uh-huh.
But let's play devil's advocate for a moment.
Okay.
What are some potential downsides to giving the president this much power over spending?
Yeah.
I mean, what if a future president uses impoundment for, less than noble purposes.
That's a valid concern. It's a lot of power to put in one person's hands. And there's always the risk that it could be used,
right,
for political gain, to punish opponents or to advance a particular agenda that might not be in the best interest of the country as a whole.
So it's not as simple as saying, like, Trump good, deep state bad,
That's not.
Even if we agree that there's a problem with government waste and a lack of accountability, the solution isn't necessarily clear-cut.
It's not a simple issue. And it's important to remember that the concept of a deep state itself is highly debated, as we discussed earlier. There's no consensus on whether it truly exists or to what extent it influences government actions. It's a slippery concept, hard to prove or disprove definitively.
It's almost like a ghost story, right? Everyone's heard of it. But no one can say for sure if it's real. And that makes it a powerful tool for those who want to sow distrust in government institutions or to explain away their own failures.
It does. It can be very easy to just blame the deep state for anything you don't like, even if there's no evidence to support those claims. And that kind of rhetoric can be dangerous because it erodes public trust and makes it harder to have constructive conversations about real problems.
Absolutely. But on the flip side, some would argue that the very fact that so many people believe in the deep state, regardless of their political affiliation, suggests that there's something there. Even if there's just a perception. Maybe it's a reflection of a deeper unease about, like, the way our government operates, a sense that something isn't quite right.
It's an interesting perspective. It is possible that the belief in a deep state is a symptom of a larger problem, a loss of faith in the system itself. And if that's the case, then simply dismissing it as a conspiracy theory might not be the most productive approach.
It's like trying to treat a fever without addressing the underlying infection. You might bring the temperature down temporarily, but the problem will keep coming back until you deal with, like, the root cause.
Exactly.
So even if we, like, set aside the question of whether the deep state is real or not, we're still left with some important questions to consider. What has led to this widespread distrust in government? How do we address the very real concerns about waste and accountability? And what role should the president play in all of this?
These are big questions. And it feels like we've only scratched the surface of this topic, But if we take a step back and look at what we've covered so far, I think we can start to, piece together some key takeaways.
I agree. We've defined the concept of the deep state. We've explored its history and examined the arguments for and against its existence. We've also delved into Trump's plan to use impoundment as a weapon against it. Highlighting both the potential benefits and the potential risks.
We have.
And we've looked at some concrete examples of government spending that, at the very least, raise questions about accountability and efficiency.
Exactly. But I think the most important takeaway is that this is a complex issue with no easy answers. It's not about choosing sides. It's about engaging in thoughtful debate, considering all perspectives, and ultimately deciding what we believe is the best way to ensure a government that is truly accountable to the people it serves.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect segue into the final thought we want to leave you with today. Could giving the president the power to just, like, halt spending, like Trump suggests, really fix the problem? Or would it just create a whole new set of issues? It really makes you think about, like, what system truly serves the people best?
It is a question worth pondering. We've given you a glimpse into the arguments, the historical context, and the different perspectives surrounding the deep state and impoundment. Now it's your turn to kind of wrestle with these ideas.
That's what we love about these deep dives. We're not here to give you a definitive answer or tell you what to think. Our goal is to provide you with the information and tools to think critically and form your own informed opinions.
Because let's be honest, in today's world, we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Yeah, we are.
It's easy to get swept away by, the loudest voices or the most sensational headlines. But it's more important than ever to develop the skills to, like, sift through all that noise and arrive at our own conclusions.
Absolutely. So let's recap what we've explored today. We started by diving into this murky concept of the deep state.
We did.
examining the arguments for and against its existence. And considering like why this idea resonates with so many people.
Yeah.
We then looked at Donald Trump's bold plan to use impoundment as like a weapon against this perceived deep state, weighing the potential benefits and risks of such a move.
We did. And we didn't shy away from the specifics.
Right.
We looked at real-world examples of government spending that many consider wasteful, raising questions about accountability and whether those funds are truly being used in the best interests of the American people.
We also explored the historical context, right? Looking at how the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 shifted the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches when it comes to spending.
And through it all, we've encouraged you, the listener, to think critically about these issues, to weigh the evidence, and to form your own opinions.
Right.
Because ultimately, that's what makes a democracy work. Informed citizens actively participating in the process.
So, as we always say in the deep dive, knowledge is power.
It is.
But it's up to each of us to take that knowledge, apply it to the world around us, and engage in a thoughtful, respectful debate about the issues that matter most.
And who knows, maybe you'll even come up with some solutions or insights that we haven't even considered. We're always learning, too.
That's right. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive Dispatch. We hope you found today's episode enlightening and packed full of insight. Remember, your support keeps us diving deep into the stories that matter. So if you enjoyed the show, make sure to download and share it with others who crave a deeper understanding of politics and history. And don't forget, we want to hear from you. If there's a topic out there that you think deserves a deep dive, reach out and let us know. Your input helps us bring you the most compelling content week after week. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time on Deep Dive Dispatch. Keep exploring, folks.